My name is Karley Rojas, a senior undergraduate at HSU in the botany department. Today, I will be presenting on Ethnobotanical Index and native plant agroecosystems in Humboldt County bioregions. The development of sustainable food systems may be one of the most important challenges faced by the modern world. As a researcher, I've been drawn to sustainable food systems, particularly in the field of agroecology and creating food systems working with local native plants, which initiated this project. Agroecosystems work on creating systems out of known indices of plants and how they work together. However, this field is entrenched in theft of indigenous knowledge. While acknowledging common origins, it frequently fails to credit or give origin to derived practices, nor to work with the communities that are the progenitors of that knowledge. Polyculture and integration of native plants into systems of production is rooted in indigenous traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, and its practice. The initial goal I elucidated of creating agroecosystems using native plants is utilizing Western vocabulary to describe an ancient practice, but one given little to no attention in Western academia. Western science is all the poorer for the failure to work with TEK and its communities of source. The weft of Western and indigenous knowledge should not be the focus of benefit for non-native societies and should rather focus on supporting what indigenous communities need, including land back and traditional land management that will ensure responsible use of resources based in TEK. At the direction of tribes, Western academia and ways of knowing can be supplementally incorporated. That's my take on it. It is the support of indigenous praxis and communities that will develop a sustainable world. Focusing on native plants, much of the knowledge of traditional ethnobotanical use, including sacred and privileged information, has been historically extorted and exploited by anthropologists and ethnobotanists, which serves as a basis for modern Western understandings of native plants and their uses, often resulting in their misuse and exploitation. Following the praxis outlined by Mauro and Hardison 2000, scientists should make a strong effort to make data available in previously published and data-based information to the communities of origin and provide capacity building to help them manage that information. This praxis forms the basis of our current work, an indexing of ethnobotanical literature concerning Wiyot, Tolowa, Hupa, Yurok, and Karok, heretofore known as the tribes of focus, whose traditional lands are encompassed by the North California coast bioregion. Our goal is to create an aggregation of information for a potential database for the exclusive access of these tribes. This work will not be published for public access. Our project focuses on reviewing existing ethnobotanical literature concerning the tribes of focus and reviewing the ethnobotanical literature further afield as well, which would have implications for plants occurring within the traditional territories of the tribes of focus. We are looking at plants and fungi, including lichenized fungi, taxonomically, that have been used as fungi, medicine, material building, or in a spiritual capacity. We're updating the taxonomy found in these sources, and we're also including elucidated Western knowledge about ecosystem characteristics of these plants, such as range, habitat, growth, coalitions, that might be helpful in future resource management applications. We have reviewed 5 accessible sources that pertain directly to the tribes of focus. Venn diagrams are a good visualization of this project. The overlap of taxa found within these sources as they apply to individual tribes under divisions of use. Our divisions are food, medicine, basket making, and other. You will find all 4 Venn diagrams in the presentation. This shows the distribution of information in the literature associated with a particular tribal people. The bar graph indicates the number of genera utilized by a particular tribe within the category, and the number of elements indicates the genera within the sample that occur, ranging exclusively by being in relationship with one tribe to being in relationship with all 5 tribes. Medicine, other materials, basketry. Word clouds indicate the frequency of language associated with plants listed in a particular source. The perception of plant relationships by the surveyors is very obviously represented, but it can also represent the traditional relationships with plants held by these tribes. Some of the utilizations of plants include working with them as bulbs, roots, seeds, nuts, and berries, importantly, for relationships as food plants. We also reviewed sources for a larger bioregion of both traditional and modern ethnobotanica, which has bearing on native plants occurring within the traditional lands of the tribes of focus. We have so far reviewed 7 sources. This is a work in progress. We will be reviewing more. We also must critique the sources that we are reviewing. Ethnobotanical literature reflects only segments of TEK, which is far from exhaustive. Western ethnobotanical investigations, particularly older literature, are enormously data-driven, which reduces TEK to pieces of information. This is reductive to use, rather than encompassing the holistic relationships between plants, a people, and their associated place. TEK is woven into and is inseparable from the context of a culture, which is based in a framework of respect, reciprocity, and responsibility. Kimura 2002. There's also extraordinary bias in these sources. The ethnobotanical surveys and fieldwork publications, many of which were conducted prior to 1950, reflect a very extortionist mentality, and many of those individuals assumed primitivism and ignorance of the tribes that they were surveying, rather than starting on a footing of equality and respect. Some of the more modern sources, of course, are conducted in partnership or were conducted by Indigenous peoples for the goal of their benefit. Absence of particular plants from the literature sources does not indicate lack of knowledge of those plants from the communities interviewed. These communities have created this knowledge and have their own ways of communicating and perpetuating these knowledge systems, including within the structure of their own language. So where are we taking this project? Our future orientations. The format and protocol of a potential database has not yet been established. As elucidated in conversation with Dr. Gutcha Riesling-Baldi, this will come only from extensive research and communication with these tribes, and whether there's even an interest for a database needs to be investigated. We are hoping to present to the HSU Native American Studies Department's Food Sovereignty Lab Steering Committee, on which representatives of these tribes of focus sit. If there is interest for a database, a constant feedback relationship will inform on the formatting and protocol of this database. The ultimate goal is for this to be helpful to tribes through understanding of where the components of their TEK have been disseminated and returning it to a consolidated, accessible form for communities. This database will form a restitution of knowledge under community oversight. As a researcher in the future, I hope one day to work with tribes in their resource management systems, particularly to grow plants. Thank you for your attention. We must acknowledge the generous funding of the ARI HSI Fellowship, HSU, and of course the NCSCE and Censor for this opportunity.